Hey, Issa with Journey to Programming here. We've been talking about job applications, interviews, and kind of the career searching process, the job hunting process. I want to go through a few resumes here that I found of students and recent graduates trying to apply for jobs and internships. And I want to review them for you from the standpoint of somebody who has been on the hiring side as well as the interviewing and applicant side. So I'm going to dive right in here and do it really quickly for you. So we're going to start here with John Doe, and it's a little bit hard to read, so let me go ahead and zoom in for you. But this John Doe is, let's see, a student that will be graduating at the end of this year. Congratulations if you end up coming by this review. They're going to be graduating from the university with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, Electrical Engineering, Computer Engineering, and a BA in Chinese Studies. I'm a little bit confused, but okay. That is amazing if you're getting all those majors. Wow. You've been really working your rear end off, so congrats. Keep working hard. Either way, they're getting a BS in some sort of engineering or technical field. Let's go ahead and jump into the next set here. Automatically, I kind of like, this is a very kind of traditional resume format. They've got their name up top. They've got their contact information right in front of me. So I've got their phone number if I want to give them a call, their email if I want to reach out to them, and also their LinkedIn. So if I want to find them, I can easily do that, right? So jumping in from there, their formatting looks pretty consistent. I can see that they tend to do the underlined header of the section, the bolded title or company name, and then they do, let's see, a city, so locations, and then they have a list of years. They all look pretty consistent here, so that looks good. So let's jump into the next section here and look at their professional experience. So this is a student with professional experience already. They've been doing some basically been writing some test code, which is great. So they've been doing web stack, testing APIs, some mobile application testing, probably confirming that APIs are delivering the correct data. That's awesome. That's some really good experience to have for somebody entry level, especially if you're looking for an internship. And I believe you were looking for an internship. So I think that's some great experience there. Developing user access control functionality using Go. That's awesome. So I think that description's really good. You've written all the applicable experience that you've gained from it and what you're actually doing. That is very good. You've been doing it for a few months now, since you started in May, for over a year, actually. So you've been doing that since May 2018. That is not a short internship. That's probably a job that you've been doing, which is great. So you should be looking for regular software engineering positions, maybe even mid-level or full-on non-entry-level positions. But let's continue on here. So you were a software verification and validation intern before. Let's see, for Raytheon. Okay. So it looks like you were just fixing some bugs that were listed in Jira, probably low-level ticket item stuff. Did some testing, some UAT. Got to play around with government compliance and specs. That's always fun. Good for you. So I'd say your professional experience is actually pretty clear. It's well written. It's direct to the point. It's technical heavy. So it's something where if I'm hiring somebody or if I'm considering them as a candidate for the company I'm working for my team, this is great. This is what I want to know. I want to know what you've done that's applicable to what you're going to be doing, to what I need you to do. So I think that's excellent. I think in some of my prior roles, this may have been weeded out prior to ever even hitting my desk, unfortunately. And that would have been because either we were working with a recruiting company that didn't necessarily see enough technical expertise with specific terminology that we would have asked them to look for. And that's just how that sometimes works. So, for example, we may have said that we need somebody that knows how to work within Unity 3D using C#, and then also understands Python and communicating between a web server with Python and relaying the data over to Unity. So your skill set obviously would fit into that. You've already worked with APIs, you've worked with mobile applications and web applications, so you know how to communicate between a server and how to either test or even potentially write APIs, since you've been developing user access control functionality using Go, and you understand databases since you've been optimizing MySQL databases, which is amazing. That's some great experience. That relates to Postgres, it relates to jumping into Mongo. Databases are all databases, so it relates, the experience. But if we were working with a recruiting company, they may have just weeded you out because you didn't have that terminology in there. Let's see, software projects. Let's see, Amazon clone, database theory and design. So it sounds like you were in school for this and you maybe developed some little projects there. That's awesome. I think that's great. You do a good job describing them as well. Actually, I think you do a decent job on the next one too, front desk property management system. So you were an RA, property tracking system, okay, forecasted annual saving. Now you're getting into the business kind of side of things. So you're beginning to story tell. You forecasted an annual savings of $8,500 using financial data from the previous 5 years. That's a good kind of performance metric there. So if you can turn some of your professional experience bullet points into something more story-based and something that displays how you changed or affected the team you're on or the company you're working for, that usually fits in as being more attractive to the recruiting side of things before it ever hits the technical interviewers or the technical reviewers. So before it hits my table, it will go through kind of an HR team or a recruiting team, and they don't have the technical knowledge. But when they see stats like this, they're like, ooh, this person created some effective software. They're using some modern tech stacks. Maybe the recruiter knows what Mongo is. They know what Node is. They may know what Express is. I would hope so. But they may not know the ins and outs. So again, I think overall, all the description up until this point is pretty good. I think you begin selling yourself a little bit better here with this metric. I think you've got some modern tech stacks here. And it's funny because you were working in them probably during college. Then you got into working for companies directly, and you got into the professional work, which is a little less flashy. You're not working with text messaging services like Twilio. You're not writing scripts that interact with Google Apps and stuff. You're not using Mean, probably, the Node stack and all of that, like you were experimenting with back here in 2016 and 2017. Instead, you're testing APIs using for iOS, for mobile applications, for web applications. You're doing some MySQL optimizations. You're doing some very business-relevant stuff now rather than experimenting. So it's an interesting change that you have there, but it's really interesting experience that you've got under your belt. You've got another section here called work experience. I think that's a little bit odd to have a second section for work experience. I see professional versus work. I'm suspecting that work experience is unrelated to the industry, but let's take a quick look. So you've got a teaching assistant job. So you were a TA for the Intro CS class. That's cool. That's some good experience. And then you were an RA. Okay, you were an RA at this time too. And it seems like you took some business, some of your business background or entrepreneurial spirit, and you went on and propose the idea of these management systems you mentioned here under software projects and this information system, the staff notification one. That's amazing if you did. Good for you. I actually don't think this section needs to be in here. I know your resume is one page right now, and you don't need to shorten it anymore. We like to be on one page. I think you could possibly knock out the majority of this work experience section or get rid of the window cleaning company, unless you want to display that you've worked in other stuff, or in other industries or in other types of roles. It's not applicable to software development. It doesn't really need to be here. It does say that you supervised and coached 16 employees. That's good leadership experience, and it's good to know that. I think you could summarize some of this into maybe a single bullet point or a single story underneath the same company name, and that would explain this instead of 3 bullet points. I think also, I think you could definitely summarize this into a story, something that says how you are effective at acquiring clients and also leading a team and training people. But then I think you can also combine this subsection here for your TA experience and RA experience. I think this entire work experience section can be brought up into your professional experience, bring it up underneath your actual software development experience, because that's obviously more applicable. And then you can just summarize them into stories rather than taking up so much room as bullet points. Additionally, I think because you have professional experience, this should really be your first thing on your resume. If I were to pull up your resume, great, you're going to be graduating from college in a few months, awesome. But I could have looked at this after seeing your professional experience. So maybe move professional experience up to the top, move these out of work experience, because you don't need a professional and work experience section. They are kind of redundant. And then move these 2 up into professional experience and summarize them into a short, like couple sentences long, little paragraph with a little bit of a story talking about what you did, how you were effective, and what it did for the company or the role you were in, the team you were in. And I think that should summarize this whole section. That'll shorten everything. You can put your education after the professional experience, before software projects, and then you can add a little bit more kind of story behind your professional experience to your actual software professional experience. Maybe a slight summary to these bullet points to add how this affected or how you helped to reduce bugs in production, maybe for some of these bullet points, how you optimize MySQL, and if you actually have any measurable optimization statistics there, that may be useful. Again, these are all just little tips. I'm going to go ahead and move on in just a second, but good job overall. This is a pretty well thought out resume. You could think about making 2 versions of this, making one like I just mentioned with the adjustments to the layout here. Make this your technical resume, and then have a simplified resume which removes or abstracts a little bit of the in-depth technical information you have in here and replaces it with a story-based explanation, and you use that for your general application. So when you submit an application, you assume a recruiter is going to read that, right? It's going to hit some headhunter or recruiter or a staffing firm, and they're going to want to vet that resume for like 30 seconds or a minute before they choose to move you on. So you may want a simplified resume that really piques their interest. And that could be one that tells a little bit of a story so that they maybe give you a shot. Just my recommendations. Let's go ahead and move on. Again, good job here. So I'm going to move on to this first one I have here. So this is a student looking for, it's a junior computer science student at UC Davis. Good school, okay. Looking for a summer internship. I suspect you were looking for a summer internship for this summer right now or something like that. I think that your first opening line here, okay, I get it, but it could have been clarified a little bit better. You could say I'm a computer science student at UC Davis in my junior year, actively looking for a summer internship or a summer 2019 internship. That would clarify it a little bit more. Not a huge deal. I think it'd read better too. Your first section right now is education. Education, like I mentioned on the last video, I think that if you're a student without professional experience in the industry, that having your education at the top is fine. I think if you have work experience, which I see here, you could possibly move the work experience to the top, put your education in the middle, and then your hobby projects or school projects at the end. So you could possibly move these around. I probably would, because looking at your education, these are great to have listed. I think you could really make them stand out a little bit more. I don't see, on a quick glance, you don't see the difference between them. They are both pretty similarly formatted, and they both say computer science, so then I question, why do I have two versions? Then I'm able to read without very good kind of delineation between them that these are two different universities. That's fine. I went to a community college before I went to a university, so I think that's probably what you did here. You did your first kind of set of courses before you transferred at a JC, a junior college or a community college, and then you transferred over to UC Davis, or you went somewhere to another university and transferred. Whatever, it's all the same. Nevertheless, I don't think you need to put all these courses in here. I think maybe bold the college name. You can then keep the location on it the same. This one says Davis. I think you just mean Davis, California, or just Davis and end it there. This one says Cupertino, but it doesn't say California. So consistency can be fixed there. You have relevant coursework on this one up here. It's not italicized versus your relevant coursework here is. Use bullet points on the top for UC Davis, but you don't use bullet points for everything in De Anza College. So you may want to consider that. Again, I think you can remove a majority of this stuff. If you want, you can maybe just tell a little story or use a comma delimited format. Maybe to say relevant coursework, underneath it start a little paragraph or a little list, but using commas. That way you don't take up so much room, and just say programming methodologies in C++ 1 and 2, comma, data abstraction and structures, comma, Java programming, comma, or maybe Java programming 1 and 2, comma, and then intro to assembly. That's a fun course. I hope you had fun with that one. And then similarly, you can do the same up here. That way I'm not telling you to remove all of the relevant coursework. I'm just simplifying the way it looks on paper. Next, your work experience, computer science TA, and mathematics tutor. Those are great. It definitely isn't professional kind of experience after college. It's probably something you've been doing while still a student. That's awesome. I think that's always good to put in a resume if you don't have a bunch of professional experience on your resume already, which is relevant. So definitely keep this stuff on here. Provide one-on-one support in Java, C++. Okay. So what I would love to see in this TA description is, how did you support students in relation to their assignments and the way you kind of tutored them? Whichever one you did, you were a TA here, so you probably were answering questions when students were confused, maybe looking over their projects and assignments, giving them tips if their code was obviously flawed and had bugs in it. It would be great to know exactly what you did. Were you doing code reviews? Were you working on students to kind of understand logic and design their OOP problems or their project better? It'd be good to know. I think you kind of reiterate similar. That's different, I guess. So now you're helping students while they're studying and probably preparing for finals and midterms. So I think the rest of it's okay. Not a big deal, but I would love to see exactly how you were helping them. If you're providing code reviews, that's great for me to know. It means that you're used to reading code and being able to analyze it on the fly and figure out what the compiled solution is going to do, if it's going to compile, what the result's going to be by reading the statements, etc. So that'd be good to know in here. Okay, for De Anza, so same college. I assume this was the community college or the school you were at before you transferred to your math tutor. I think that's pretty good. I think you explained this one a little bit better. I know that you're working with individuals and groups on math lessons and activities, complete training and development sessions to maximize effectiveness as tutors. So you were finishing training lessons and modules. That's good. You learned a little bit of delegation in here, and you were able to encourage students to develop skills, etc. That's really good. I think that's good for the description on that one. The computer science TA, again, if you could add just a little bit more to that one to tell me what you were doing and how you were supporting the students, that'd be great. Now, last, your projects. This is a long project breakdown. It'd be nice to know if this was a student project or a hobby project. So if you could break that down and maybe give me that information, it'd be good. It's odd that you start with bullet points here without a header for it. So here you have a header, which is DeAnda College, and then you go into bullet points. Here you have no header. You just kind of go into bullet points. I think that's a little bit odd. Not a big deal. Again, I come from the technical side of things, so it wouldn't hurt my feelings if I received your resume. I would look at it in terms of your technical capabilities. But recruiters and people reviewing resumes before it ever even hits my table at normal corporate jobs are going to possibly just kind of throw it out to the side if it doesn't have enough matching kind of concepts and keywords that we need for the job rec. Job rec, meaning job requisition or job post opening. So let's see, this project, Kelley Blue Book car configuration prototype. Job application developed in 6 units. Okay, so you're learning object-oriented programming, probably an OOP class. That's awesome. Okay, so this reads back to me like you were doing a class project. You were probably learning how to break things down into interfaces, classes, how to inherit properly, and go through standard OOP type concepts. Maybe you were learning how to override and overload. That's great. You learned some abstract classes in interfaces. I see exception handling, something that is people overlook handling exceptions in a lot of production code, and it's rough to see when in production something is not being properly tested and then exceptions are not being kind of accounted for. So that's good to know. Yeah, I think that was pretty good. So actually your descriptions are pretty good. Your formatting could use a little bit of improvement. And then this section down here, your skills, I like that you went with a kind of a user interface design for it. It shows that you have a little bit of a design prowess to you. That's cool, especially if you're going to try doing any kind of front-end work or UI work. I think this really needs to be put into the first page. This should not run into 2 pages. So if you compress down your education section by removing the bullet points and making them a comma delimited list, then you may compress it enough to also pull in your skills section and that way not run on to 2 pages. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one here. So this is a 2-page one. This one looks like you have a lot of experience, whoever you are. You do a good job putting your contact information on the top, your university, so you're probably still a student. Your address, you really don't need to post your address on your resume. I don't like to, especially because I have a good amount of experience now. I don't want people to know where I live, especially recruiters. No offense to your recruiters, I just don't trust you guys. Your phone number is good to have on there. To be honest, I sometimes use a burner number, so I have like a Google Voice number set up, which I can give people. And then once they actually reach out to me, I may consider giving them my actual numbers. And your other links are good. Maybe having a LinkedIn would be good up there. Your GitHub's fine. That's great. Let's take a look. So you have a summary section up there. Summary sections are always questionable in our field. So in software, having a summary section is kind of hit or miss if it's going to be well received or not. I don't mind them. Again, that's me. Recruiters can look at them as being kind of old and antiquated, but it's hit or miss. I think if you do them well, they work out. Otherwise, just cut them out. Your relevant experience will show what you've done. So let's take a look. You have 5 years of experience in doing some LAMP stack stuff, it looks like, with Java. You've done websites, okay, independent collaborative work. Okay, we're done. Working knowledge of C, C++, and ML. That's cool. All right, so you have some pretty cool experience. After just reading that and knowing that you had a listing here that you're still in your bachelor's, this 5 years plus experience probably is going to be experience you had during school, maybe working on the side, maybe you did it before. I think it's making you sound almost like you're a mid-level to senior because it's 5 years here, 3 years here, working knowledge of C, C++, and machine learning. But then if you read into it and you really kind of consider the fact that you have a university name up here and that you're probably a student, then you realize, okay, this is maybe conflating your experience a little bit. Not a problem. I had years of web development experience before I graduated college, actually before I even got into college. So I had similar. It did not negatively affect me, but that's just how I read it now. With years of experience in hiring people fairly regularly nowadays, I see resumes of all types, and that's just my feelings right away. So again, not a big problem. I'm not a fan of summary sections personally. You can keep yours in anyways, not a big deal. Let's open the relevant experience. So your most current relevant experience, looks like you've been working for Massey Hacks 4 as an organizer. Okay. So it looks like you developed some kind of front end and maybe a little back end using Node for registering people for the event. I don't know if this is a hackathon or like a game jam. Maybe you're putting together the website and just letting people register. That's awesome. Good stuff, especially because I'm looking at your next experience here. Actually, your next set of experiences. It looks like you've done a bunch of hackathons or little programming competitions, which is awesome. And it looks like you were actually a contributor on most of those. So this organizer here, you are a contributor. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you did 6 game jam hackathons, little programming competitions, and then here you began being an organizer. So you began helping Massey Hacks with developing a front end to register students for this. That's awesome. Good for you. That's some good experience, but you also got a lot of good experience doing these programming jams. I think that's awesome to have in here. Could develop a game. Okay. You won first place. Congrats. Okay, so you co-developed a game. So you used Python libraries for facial recognition and data transfer over sockets, and used Raspberry Pis for the cameras. So that's really cool. My technical side's wondering, okay, so what kind of what kind of protocols did you guys use on the sockets? How did you guys transfer the data? Like, in what format was the data when you were transferring it? How did you basically, how did you pack it? How did you unpack it? And then talking about the Raspberry Pis, how did you set up the cameras? How were you getting the feed to transfer over? That may be what you're talking about with the data transfer over sockets. So you guys were probably loading a camera onto the Pis, and the Pis were probably running a local server on maybe the local subnet. Then you were accessing it via IP or some kind of other protocol, and then you were running a Python library to recognize faces using some sort of machine learning library. And that's a lot of fun. I think that's really cool. I think you could tell a better story there to really sell the fact that you're using a lot of tools there which are used for these different areas. So you're probably using the Python machine learning libraries. That's awesome. It'd be nice to know that. Maybe mention the library names. You're probably using NumPy and then also, or NumPy, and then probably maybe scikit-learn or something like that, or scikit. And for the data transfer, again, you're probably just doing something on the local subnet, and you're probably just transferring either some kind of TCP connection or maybe some RTP or RTP. So that's pretty cool. I would have loved a little bit more description. Congrats on winning first place. Moving down to the next one. So you display a 3D model showing past and future pollution levels. Microsoft is machine learning. Okay, so you're really focusing on machine learning. That's pretty cool. So you're basically making visualizations. You guys were making visualizations for this project. It would be nice to know how you guys created the visualizations. I don't know that based on what you guys wrote. Were you guys doing it in a game engine? So did you guys use like Unity or Unreal to create some kind of cool 3D model visualizations of it? Did you guys use a charting type library for JavaScript in order to do it? It'd be nice to know a little bit of that information, and that's part of the story. So moving on, Fire Emblem, use Java. Okay. So I think this one, at least you mentioned you use Java and then the library. A lot of people aren't going to know anything about Fire Emblem, to be quite honest. So you may want to mention something there. But I'm getting the gist of what you're doing. You probably understand what I'm saying. It'd be nice to know the technicalities of what you did. And you could do that in a little story form. So in this NHACS programming competition, you could maybe word it something like this. Worked with a team to develop a game where players will eliminate each other by pointing a camera at one another, and whoever does it the fastest, or whoever's the last one that hasn't been seen by the other's cameras, is the winner. I use the Python libraries, XYZ libraries, to recognize faces based on the cameras, and you can maybe mention that these were real cameras because I just now connected that in my brain, and transferred the information. So they were cameras connected to Raspberry Pis, and we transferred the camera feed to a computer running a Python script, which then provided the facial recognition and kind of works out like that. So once the data was received in Python, it handled the machine learning for the facial recognition. And if a camera saw a face, that told me that that camera has seen somebody. That person who it saw is now eliminated. The last person standing was the winner. You can word it in a way like that. So you've told a story. It could be like 3 or 4 lines and you'll be good. So I think you can do that for a handful of these. Canadian Youth Chess Championships website. Cool. So you developed another website there. That's great. Awards, education. I actually think your resume is pretty well formatted. I mean, it's a pretty traditional layout. You've got the capitalization and consistency of your text everywhere. You've got decent section differentiation going on. Everything seems pretty consistent. Seems like you've had somebody review it, or you're just a very kind of meticulous person. Good for you. Looks like a good one. Hopefully you have some luck in your job searches and internships. So, okay, so this is the last one. So remember, this is 2 pages. So coming right off looking at this is a Google Doc template. And I know it because I've used it. And maybe one of these days I'll show you guys one of my resumes. I definitely have used this resume before, or this template from Google Docs. I think it's fine. You have your email and some kind of GitHub link there. You can maybe add your LinkedIn. You probably have your name here and the title you're looking to have. I think jumping straight into your experience is good. So your college name, and you were an IT assistant. That's great to know. You've got September to Dem. So I'm assuming this is December. You would want to at least shorten that to DEC. Not a huge deal, but that's going to be more understandable. I think on a quick glance, I'm not even going to think about it. I would have known. But I did look, and I see DEM, which is kind of confusing. That's fine. Just make the quick change. So you're a part-time IT assistant fixing IT equipment, removing or installing IT equipment for the school, such as internet cable, desktops, power supply of the phone, and more. Okay, so I get what you're doing. You're doing straight IT work, and it would be nice to know what kind of equipment you were working with. If it was just running cable, so Cat5, Cat6 cables, and maybe you were crimping wires, and then you were also wiring up and maybe cleaning desktop computers, so taking apart the case, opening them up, and stuff like that, that's great. If you're wiring also the phones, that's good to know, but knowing the type of equipment will help. Just in case you do go into an IT job, it shows that you have worked with XYZ companies, technologies. Also, I think you could do a little bit better, maybe ask a peer of yours, somebody you know, maybe a friend, to review the resume just for readability's sake. I know when I write I always ask others to review it because I don't always write amazingly, but I think that could definitely help you out. So basically, just getting a little bit of review and feedback, just like we're doing here, just to make sure it makes a little more sense when reading it. So you may be able to rewrite this as, I was a part-time IT assistant helping to fix XYZ equipment, maybe the company brands or product numbers, and also install and remove IT equipment for the school. The requirements and responsibilities included installing and removing internet cable, so Cat5, Cat6, desktop computers, power supplies for phones, XYZ type phones, and I'm not sure what else more would be. If there isn't any more detail to add there, you may want to cut it off at that point. So moving on to the next section, so warehouse staff. This inconsistency is a little bit rough. You'd want to have some sort of either company name or a title here to go along with it. This seems like this was your title, so you want to have a consistency there. So you have here first, you mentioned at this college you were an IT assistant. Where were you warehouse staff would be good to know. So during your time there as warehouse staff, you manage Excel based on how many cargo received and sent in warehouse each day, updating shipping record and common. Okay, that makes sense. So you were managing kind of inventory and then also logs of incoming and outgoing inventory, right? So that seems pretty straightforward. Again, I think it could just be written a little more clearly. It's not a problem. I think you've got the basis of it all down. So don't overthink that. You can maybe say, since this is something it looks like you're still doing, and this job up here you're doing from September 2019 to December 2019. This looks like you haven't started it yet. So I think it's a little rough to have it on here, unless you meant 2018 to December 2019 or 2018 to 2018. But what you can maybe say here for warehouse staff is manage the Excel that kept track of incoming and outgoing receivables to the warehouse each day, or maybe reword it as manage the Excel that kept track of daily incoming and outgoing receivables or cargo products, etc. Additionally, updated shipping records and labeling across the warehouse. That may be a good way to do it. So now we're going to the next section here. This looks like another title that needs to be rewritten and at least be consistent with your titles up here. And this is pretty straightforward, adding Microsoft Word and updating customers. So it looks like a data entry job. Not a problem, but you could probably simplify that. So simple data entry job using Microsoft Word to update customer information, and using Microsoft Word and Excel to update customer information. The end. So projects, building a reactive website, web app, .js. Okay, this could be definitely rewritten in a better way. You don't want to have the graphic in here. It doesn't really fit. You may provide somebody with a link to look at your interface if you want to show them your design prowess. That's great for you to do. Maybe put on your Google Drive, make that file public to anyone with a link, and then just provide the link on here. Next, you should have a title for this project that you're working on. So you could also format it kind of like you did up here, and you could say XYZ title or XYZ practice application, and then you could describe what you did for it. So you could say, as part of developing my skill set and my web development background, I developed a reactive web app using React.js, Redux, and React charts. And then you could provide them with this Heroku link here so they can check out your source code, and then the link to your actual design. That way you don't have a graphic like this kind of throwing off your layout and all of that. Otherwise, it's a work in progress. I'll take a look at the second page here in just a minute. Here we go. So similarly, you can do the same with this one. I think this is it looks like a pretty impressive piece of software. A GUI that has a big linked list that holds many different types of child linked lists. So you're displaying your ability to work with data structures. That's great to do. It's a good hobby project, and it's a good project to show that you're interested in learning and working on your skills. Again, this graphic is not, this is not the right place to display the graphic. So again, what you can do is you take the image out of your resume. I think you could then condense your resume all into one page. I'm fairly certain you can. And then what you can do is you can put this graphic into a free Google Drive account, and you can then set the privacy settings of the graphic on Google Drive so that anyone with a link can access it. Then you can get that link off Google Drive, and then you can post that in here. And that will simplify and really make your resume look a lot more clean and cohesive when you submit it. And you can just add the link kind of next to where your source code link is. Next, your educational section. Okay, maybe you're just removing the company, so that may be my bad for not realizing that. But here I see in your education you don't have the school listed. That's fine. Just make sure you put it in there, and you want it to also be a consistent title style that you did, like you did here. And need 2 more general education classes for your AA, transferring for bachelor's. So I don't think people need to know necessarily this information. You can mention, if you'd really like, maybe a little bit of information regarding the classes that are applicable to a software development internship. So if you're transferring to do a computer science degree at a university, you've probably taken a few intro to computer science courses. So maybe list a few of those in here, and that would help out. All right, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this session. So if you guys have any questions, or if you want me to check out a resume, you guys are more than welcome to send it over to me, and we'll see if we can either answer your questions or maybe even check out some resumes and do a review for you guys on video. You will find my contact information somewhere around here in just a minute, and you can also leave me comments down below. Have a good one, you guys.